America Online was a big thing when I was 13.
Or in other words for my generation, AIM, which stood, you guessed it, AOL Instant Messenger. It was around 2002, and I would have been a fresh 13 and in 8th grade. I had many times went into chat rooms by myself or with my friends goofing around. Unfortunately, unsolicited photos were a thing then too, but usually you could stay clear of it by the chat room you entered. I didn't have any photo of myself, and you had took the digital photo and upload it from your camera. Plus, I was 13 and self-conscious, which I'm sure anyone can relate with. But one day, a guy popped up on my screen. It went fine at first,
I was very naive back then.
and we quickly fell into a pattern of talking. His name was Dave, and he lived in California. Eventually, him telling me he loved me, etc. But the problem was, he was 19. Now, I wasn't proud of this, but at first, being 13, I just sent picture of some random girls and said it was me. He instantly fell for me, telling my age was just a number and how mature I was. He did not live in state, so there was never any actual chance of us meeting. Eventually, he told me he and his mom were moving up in a city that was about an hour and a half away from me. He started begging me to see him and go to a movie. Anything. I had to break the catfishing truth and say those weren't pictures of me, but of someone else. He was furious. He had been looking forward to a different type of child this whole time. They forgave me. A few days later, saying, I still want to meet you because I love you. All the things you say to a young girl and to get her to swoon. I think back then and I'm like, wow, I was 13. So I told my best friend everything I just explained above and that I want her to go with me to meet him. There was a whole plan about him driving to see me and going to movies to finally meet what I thought was the love of my life. I had been brainwashed into believing this was normal. I didn't tell my mom, of course, and honestly, she didn't notice any of it was going on. So the day my friend and I were going to meet up with Dave, her mom came and picked up from school. She said something that made my stomach drop into nothingness. She said, "You are not going to the movie. You are not going to meet that man. You are going to get seriously hurt or kidnapped. And I can't allow you guys to go." I cried and cried because I honestly thought I could handle everything and be fine. She told me she wasn't going to tell my mom. I had to promise to never speak to him again and never plan to meet a stranger online. He ended up showing up and was upset I wasn't there. He went on AIM, flying off the handle like I hadn't seen at that age. It scared me. It scared me how close I was to this man being near me.
I never talked to Dave again.
But I easily believe I would have been kidnapped or worse. That day, if my best friend mom hadn't stepped in, my mom would have been none the wiser. I was none the wiser, but I am here today and learned the dealer lesson. The first story comes from the Redditor user Coffee Vapes Cats, posted on the R Creepy Encounters with over 600,000 members. Hi, I'm ozyrx, and today I will share you stories that I found by digging Reddit. Welcome to Take a Breath. Before starting, I quickly wanted to thank all the people that share stories on Reddit, which make videos like mine possible. So thanks to all of them and all of you watching. Reddit. It's a social network on where you can chat about anything you like by joining communities who have the same interest as you. But that's the top of the platform, the one that they want to show you. A pale whale had pictures of me. I've been reading through the stories out on here, and I've decided it's been long enough to post an experience I had in 2010. I was 10-year-old female, and my friend lived in the next street over. Let's call her Shannon. We did what typical 10-year-old would do when alone. We walked to the park and the local shop. This one day, we were on the corner of my childhood home street. and there was an older looking man with a white beard and a long coat walking a long-haired Labrador looking dog. He called us over and asked us if we wanted to play with his dog. Being 10-year-old and naive for my age, my parents never really had the stranger's danger thought. We gladly agreed and then started tossing the dog. I remember how dirty the dog felt, leaving residue on my hands, and the poor dog smelled really bad. The man asked if he could take picture of us stroking his dog. I didn't answer, but Shannon agreed. After a couple minutes, I looked up to see him putting something in his coat pocket. I'm not sure if it was a camera or a phone, but it being 2010 camera phone didn't have the best quality. He then mentioned his dog just had puppies and offered us to come back to his house to play with them. Shannon was up for it and begged me to say yes, but I refused. Not because I thought it was sketchy, but because I wanted to wash the residue from the dog off my hand. He must have lived local because we would see him often with his dog and asked us for more pictures. This continued for a couple months, and I was just starting high school. After that, I never saw him again.
A couple years later, I came across a news article from my local area when I grew up. A man that looked exactly like the one we encountered was on trial for multiple counts of child and possession of child as a image. I sent it to my old school friend and she agreed that it was him. I often wonder why that man took picture of us, where they end up, and what would have happened if we went to see those puppies.
The next story is shared by the Redditor user Then Bury Her. She posted it on the R Let's Not Meet, famous for the stories shared in it. My boyfriend, 49 years old male, convinced me, 31-year-old female, that we needed to stop talking to my mom. I figured out why, and it's messing me up. Going to do bullet point, so this doesn't get to be 10 billion pages long. Also, the title is like the tip of the iceberg. So buckle up, I guess. Also, I've been up since 4 on 2 hours of sleep, and my brain is fried all the time, so bear with me please. Be nice to me. We've been together for almost 3 years. I got pregnant unexpectedly, had super difficult pregnancy with many complications, including severe HG, bleeding, finding out I have a gene mutation that caused pregnancy complication and birth defect. We broke up at the beginning of my pregnancy because he thought I was being dramatic about the HG and refused to take me to hospital. After I was taken to the hospital and the doctor told him how close to dying I had been, he realized he'd been stupid and we reconciled. I was in labor for almost 16 hours. Things didn't progress properly. There were complications. I finally had an emergency C-section. Recovery has been completely awful for me. And once again my boyfriend has decided I'm being dramatic because
Son,
he's an easy baby. This somehow doesn't cure my continued nausea, pain from having my abdomen opened and stitched shut, rock hard chest, and sleep deprivation. Thanks, I guess he changed diapers and hold plays with baby when he's not working or fucking around on the internet. So the stuff about my mom. Shortly after we reconciled, he and my mom had a disagreement about something. At the time, he told me that she was being toxic and trying to meddle in our relationship, and that I was better if we ceased communication. He showed me screenshot from his phone that at the time seemed fairly convincing. My mom isn't crazy about him anyway, and she made no secret about that when we were separated. So even though I was surprised by the things she was saying, I did believe him, and stupidly felt like it was the right thing to do, make things work. It bothered me that he was constantly asking me if I had been talking to her, and that he had paranoid about it. But I was like, well, what she said was really hurtful. Basically, that he abused me, but I was too stupid to see she was going to come take our baby away so he wouldn't be raised by him. so I understand. A couple days ago, I overheard him talking about me on Discord voice chat, basically complaining that I was being too lazy and useless since I gave birth and that it was my job, so I needed to suck it up and do it. I didn't let him know that I had overheard, but I was upset. Later on, we were in the bedroom and the baby was losing his mind and I was having trouble getting him to latch and I was so much pain and I just started crying and saying I wanted my mom. He snapped at me that my mom had filled my head with feminist garbage my whole life and that was why I was weak and couldn't handle something women had been doing for thousands of years. I was kind of floored. I never heard him say anything like that before. I told him he needed to leave and go sleep elsewhere because I was really hurt. When he went to work the next morning, I decided to call my mom and to see what the hell he has been doing on the internet because I felt like that was the logical step to take. I was not that surprised to find that he'd been on men's right type website.
If you agree with that, fine or whatever.
And was using them to express his frustration that although he thought he'd found an ideal young partner who would have babies and to turn into an ideal housewife. Which was so weird to read because I feel like I'm the furthest thing from being some housewife type, and I'm not shy about that. I guess my mom has been filling my head with feminist garbage my whole life after all, haha. When we first met, it seemed like we had a lot of shared interests and ideas, and he enjoyed my independence. But that pregnancy had made me gross and useless, and then giving birth made me even worse, saying the only good thing about me was that I had a boy my first go. I was pretty surprised, however, to learn that the original conversation he and my mom had was about his attitude toward me, but had nothing to do with him being abusive. She never threatened to take the baby. She just suggested to him that if he really loved me, he would support me and be there for me. He told her she'd never speak to me again, and that she'd never met her grandchild. She forwarded me the conversations.
I'm not wrong in thinking that it's all totally fucked up, right? There's absolutely no saving in a relationship like this.
I know it seemed pretty cute and dry. It's all laid out, but like, I just need someone to give me some advice on what to do, where to go, from where.
Later, an edit happened.
Edit. I'm okay, and everything is okay. But I may be quiet, slow to reply, while I get some things stored out. Thank you for all your advice.
And on the 18th May 2020, the story disappeared. Only a new message remained.
Edit. I decided it's in my best interest to delete the content of this post. Everything is under control. Thank you all for all your help. Much appreciated.
The third stories come from the Redditor user through RA Shift, posted on the R relationship.
Creepy dude. While I was camping.
My friend and I encountered two creepy men on a camping trip and ignored alarm bells until late into the night, when we felt full of terror. I think my friend and I would have been raped or otherwise harmed if we hadn't listened to our guts. I was 18, my friend 16. I had just graduated high school and we decided to go camping overnight. Both of us female, but it was a safe area close to home, so we weren't worried. We were making dinners when a man in fishing gear walks into view of our campsite from up the canyon in the river. He asked if he could cut through our side to the road. Nothing seemed unusual, so we said sure. He stopped in the middle of our side and asked us what we were making. Really just made polite small talk. But then his questions started getting uncomfortable. How old are you guys? Where are you from? How long are you planning to be up here? It's just you two up here? I'll admit some little part of me felt uneasy, but my friend and I were naive. We answered every single question and even offered the guy some food. He declined the food and headed out our campsite and down the canyon. A couple hours later, he and another middle-aged man walked up to the canyon from the direction the first man left and strolled right into our campsite. The first one took us up on our earlier offer for some dinner and just really sat there. The new guys asked us a lot of questions, most along the same vein as the first guy. This felt uncomfortable. I was uneasy, but I didn't want it to be rude. After a while, they thanked us for the chat and left our campsite, heading up the canyon, away from where we assumed they were camped. This is when the alarm bells came a little less subtle. My friends and I ate and sat by the fire into the evening past dark, laughing and having fun. However, we both watched the road the whole time, and those men never went back down the canyon. Now, I concede that they may have simply had a fishing base lower in the canyon and their campsite higher, but every ounce of self-preservation was on the edge of this point. My intuition screamed for me to reconsider. I was desperate to enjoy this camping trip though, and I didn't say anything, but God, the tension was thick in the air between my friend and I. We were both uneasy and we did what we could to fill the silence between us. Eventually, she said,
"You know the worst part about camping by a river?"
My stomach sank. Of course I knew. Here in northern Utah, where the rivers are fed largely by a runoff and they traipse down steep mountains, they are loud. You can't hear anything over them, I responded. She nodded. You think we should leave, don't you? She said she didn't feel good about the situation. So we said our prayers. I now see this as a consciously and fully welcoming the voice of my intuition, my decision-making process. Clear as fucking day, we both knew we had to get up. As soon as we really stopped pushing down that intuition in the favor of having fun night, terror filled us, and we threw everything haphazardly into my car before booking it down the canyon. The terror wouldn't leave us until we got off the dirt road of the canyon fork into the main paved road out of the mountain to town. We both watched the rear view the whole time, praying never saw a headlight behind us. As soon as we had a signal, we called my dad and told him what happened. He told us to get the hell out of there and make sure we weren't being followed. We ended up sleeping safe and sound in my friend's backyard that night. Knowing what I know as a sexual assault therapist, I am almost certain those men had ill intention for us that night.
The last story is from the Redditor user Social Justice Cactus, also posted on the R Creepy Encounters from the first story. Thank you if you still remained until this moment of the video. I wanted to thank you, and I'm sorry for my late, but the editing took much more time than what I expected. So I'm very sorry, and I hope you enjoyed the video.